Good evening, guys, and welcome to the Cycle Sunday podcast. Now, a special one for us this evening. I am joined by my mate Paul Bowker up in Edinburgh. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening, Peter. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. I'm very good. But I'm
Good.
also joined by my good mate Joe Achilles. Mr. Achilles, how are you, my friend?
Very good, thanks, mate. Very good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, mate, it's an absolute pleasure. Now, just introduce yourself. I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of anyone tuning into this that's come from my YouTube channel anyway will already know who you are, but you are a professional YouTuber, are you not?
Well, yeah, if you class yourself as one of those, but yeah, I guess I am now. The reality is that as of January this year, I do YouTube full time. So, and I shoot a lot of similar stuff to you, Pete. And that's what earns me a living.
But the really cool thing is you are obviously a car YouTuber, but you are also a huge bike guy.
I am. I think I'm guessing probably 30-40% of my audience know that I love my mountain bikes or cycling in general. But I do have a bit of a bike background. So I don't know if you want me to delve into that. Or...
Yeah, no, I'm intrigued. So the two subject areas we need to cover are Brompton and mountain biking, because I hear rumours of both.
Yes,
I don't know which one you want to deal with first.
But rarely met at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Brompton was towards the end of my cycling sort of racing career, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, it all started when I was a lot younger. I've always been obsessed with cars, but as a youngster growing up in London, I love my biking. I love my mountain biking, and I found it a lot easier to get a job in the cycling industry. So actually, my first job when I was about 15 was a Saturday job at a local bike shop, and that progressed. And I don't know, when I was in my late teens, I started working full time in a bike shop. I then moved to Australia for 4 years.
Wow.
And just before I moved to Australia, I started racing cross-country mountain bikes. I brought a downhill bike just before I went to Australia. And then when I moved to Oz, I landed myself a really good job at a lovely bike shop that was basically run by a bunch of amazing downhill riders. So I latched onto them and I rode all the time with these guys in beautiful Australian weather and got myself to a pretty good level. And then just raced all the time, all of their summer I'd race, to a point where when I came back to the UK, I raced some World Cups and raced lots of national races, and I was very good at smaller races. The pressure always got to me at the bigger races. But yeah, so I kind of that was kind of how, and then I just carried on racing for many years, probably about 10 years or so in downhill, and met some amazing people along the way, like amazing Australian riders and some incredible English riders at World Cups and stuff, like Steve Peat, I know very well. And that sort of level, I guess.
Wow. That's
So
very
give us a timeline, Joe. So when did you start racing downhill, and where did you sort of finish?
So I started racing cross country in about 95. So I was about 16, 17. Raced that till about 98. And then downhill was the cool thing to do. So I got myself right. Then moved to Australia in 99. And I was there till 2003. And then I raced a couple of World Cups in 2003 and a few more in 2004. I had a big accident in 2004, actually, in a World Cup in Alpe d'Huez in the Alps. That basically, what's that?
Tell us more.
Yeah,
not that we want to,
Yeah, so it was a horrible accident, and I actually ended up in a coma in Grenoble Hospital, which is like the end of the year. And ever since, I think whenever I tried to get back on my bike after that, I wasn't scared or put off by that accident. I just never had the reaction times or the level that I was at. It never came back. So then I did lots of smaller races in the UK, like Pedal Hounds and Pork and Aston Hill and all those races with and met some really great people. Raced them for a few years, to about 2006. And then I finally sort of sold my bikes and gave up for a few years, just because it was frustrating because I couldn't ride how I knew I used to be able to, I guess.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to about 2010 or 11, I decided to go out and buy myself an enduro bike because all of my friends that I used to race with were banging on at me to, go and buy yourself a bike. So these enduro bikes, and back then we used to obviously only have downhill bikes, cross country bikes, and what's an enduro bike? So I got one and fell in love immediately because they're literally the mountain bike that does everything. And really enjoyed my time on that. Started racing a few bits and pieces, but realised that I wasn't competitive, and so I didn't do too many races. But at the same time, I was doing a job in London, which required a bit of a commute. So I ended up getting a Brompton, and when I worked in the bike trade back in the day, I mean, we used to take the mickey out of Brompton customers all the time. You could see him coming from a mile away. It's like that's a Brompton customer. He's going to come in and buy a Brompton or whatever. And then next thing, I've got one, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I loved it. It was such a great bit of kit. It was brilliant in the sense that I lived in London, and you could bring it into your office and put it under your desk, and it wasn't going to get nicked because that's obviously a massive thing in London. And then I started hearing rumours or stories about these Brompton World Championships, and at the time they were being held at Blenheim Palace. So I popped down to watch one, and I thought it was just going to be a bit of fun. But there was like the front group were really serious, and Michael Hutchinson was actually winning it. I think he'd won like 5 in a row or something. And it's hilarious because you have to wear a suit. You have to basically be in a suit and tie to compete in the Brompton World Cup.
You're kidding me?
So I watched that, and then I thought, okay, well, I've got to give this a go. And the next year it was at Goodwood, so I entered it. I think it was 2013 was my first year, and I was pretty fit then, to be fair. I won the sprint Brompton World Champs, so I was a world champion in my first. That's like, world champion. Don't ask me on what though. And then I defended my title again the year later at Goodwood again. But even in that year, 2013-14, the level went up. And then in 15, it went to London, and I raced there, and I think I was about 7th or 8th. And that was like David Miller. Obviously, he's quite a brand ambassador for Brompton, but he started training hard in 15. Then he came back in 16. And he was like right at the front. But like the top 10 riders were like, I think we averaged about 38 miles an hour around the London circuit on Pall Mall. On Bromptons, I was running
on a Brompton.
Yeah, 64 ring chain. So I've got like carbon wheels because I had a sponsor called Joseph Kuzak, and he built carbon wheels and lightweight parts. So I had a 64 chain ring, and I think it was 64 by 11, which is crazy on a big bike. Obviously, they're small wheels.
Yeah.
And I was spinning like that was like maximum RPM for 38 minutes or something. Absolutely maximum. But it was great. I've never had like, honestly, and it was so close. Like it was real elbow to elbow stuff.
Wow.
But you're passing because there was like in London there was about 1,000. I think it was 1,000 was the maximum limit. So you started off in heats. So it was like the faster people first. So we all went off. And heat 2, 3, 4. But obviously, by the time you've done a few laps of this lap at Pall Mall, you're catching up to the slow one. So we're going past these people at 40 odd miles an hour, like in a line.
Yeah.
And there's like just like fancy dress people, and it was carnage. Like looking back in some of the videos, it's just like this is just. I mean, and we're all on Bromptons, and I'm like 6'4". I'm like Pete's sort of height, and just hilarious. But yeah, they were probably some of the more memorable days because I just and that wasn't too long ago. But
so do you have photographic evidence of this, my friend?
Well, I do. I've actually got a video or two on my YouTube channel of me racing onboard cameras and stuff. And when you see that, even on camera, it looks pretty frantic because you're going past people like they're standing still. But it was great fun. But it got way too serious, and I can't even imagine now what it's like the Spanish, because it was a world thing. So you'd get the Japanese had a massive team, Spain, Italy were very strong. So you've got teams from all over the world coming in on their Bromptons, and it's just like it was like amazing. So it's a real
unbelievable.
It really is.
I just can't get the image now of chain ganging in a suit and tie on a Brompton. It's amazing.
Well, you'd have like in the first year I did it, I didn't obviously understand it too well, and I wasn't prepared. But you'd get all the top guys like Michael Hutchinson. He would have a guy there on the start line that would be pinning his suit. Make it as like he'll get in his position. Honestly, no
Aero
word of
suit.
lie. Get in his like riding position, and the guy would be like pinning his suit, everything, so that he was perfectly aero. And I'm there with my massive suit flapping in the wind. You know, it's like
Brilliant.
yeah, it's just
Oh my
other
Brilliant.
levels. Yeah,
Mate, I kind of knew. Well, I'd heard rumor. I did world champion. That's impressive skills, my friend.
yeah. Well, yeah. I guess yeah. If you drop the Brompton bit, it sounds pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Well, you still have to be the best in the world, irrespective of what you're on. To
Yeah,
be world
correct.
champion.
Yeah,
Correct.
the one at Goodwood was good. Like that last one I won in 2014, I think it was. It was quite serious, and you had to basically run. So your bikes were half folded. You had to run towards them. It was only like a 20-meter run or something. Then unfold the bike, and then
Yeah.
it was about a 2. So what turn 1 at Goodwood? What's that called?
Yeah, Madrick.
Madrick. So it was kind of at the end of Madrick, the second apex was where the start was, and the finish was where the finish line was. So we rode backwards around that corner, but we're going over the line like flat out. And that year was really it was good. I'll have to show you. I'll show you a clip of it sometime.
Mate, I'm on your YouTube channel the second we finish recording this podcast, mate. That is amazing. I never knew.
Yeah.
So over that time, then, I mean, coming back to one of the things that we try and do on the Cycle Sunday series is just talk about bike tech and stuff.
Yeah.
And if you started mountain biking in like the mid 90s, you must have seen an immense evolution of bike technology, both in terms of frames, wheels, and kind of group sets and stuff. It must have been amazing compared with, if you like, the bike you've got today compared with what the bike you were racing at a high level in the 90s.
I mean, technology, as both of you know, it's just insane. I mean, I can't keep up with it these days. It's every time you check, something's moved on. And but yeah, back then it was, like even the front suspension for mid 90s was quite a big thing. And downhill racing back then, a lot of people were racing on hardtails with like a Manitou 2 or whatever, or like a tiny 1-inch fork, which was probably completely useless. Flexy things. Caliper brakes, like the V brake wasn't even around then. And then you got the introduction of like the original disc brakes. I think the Hope did one, which again wasn't particularly good. Magura did the. They're still around, aren't they? Magura.
Yeah. They use them in trials racing still. So basically, the hydraulic calipers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's back then as well. It was like the brake of choice when they came in for trials. But and then full suspension bikes for downhill at least came in sort of towards the late sort of 96, 97. I remember them sort of coming in and becoming quite a big thing. But I mean, it was amazing, and obviously the gears. What would it have been? 7-speed, 8-speed back then.
Yeah, 7 speed. Yeah, SIS was just starting to come in. Under thumb shifters were starting to come in. Yes. But yeah, I mean the actual technology is just absolutely rocketed, hasn't it?
Because Paul, you've raced a bit, right?
Yeah. So it's almost a bit of a similar story to Joe. The only difference is that I stayed cross country and I went more cross country marathon. So it tended to be sort of 100-mile cross country events, and it's really crazy stuff because
100-mile.
Yeah. So but the thing that you've got to bear in mind is that a cross country mountain bike back then in the late 80s, early 90s, a modern gravel bike is actually more technologically advanced than an 80s cross-country bike. So an 80s and 90s cross-country bike, as Joe quite rightly said, disc brakes hasn't been invented yet. Suspension really hasn't been invented yet. That's starting to come in. And I remember getting my mum to... persuading my mum, should I say, that I needed a pair of RockShox Mag 21 SL titaniums.
Oh.
I know, yeah, Joe, calm yourself. And I fitted those to a Park Pre titanium hardtail frame. There was a guy in
Wow.
Blackburn who did custom wheels. So I had, it was like Mavic rims, I think 537s or something like that. Custom
Yep.
spokes, Hope Super Bubba hubs, and all of those sorts of things back
Yeah.
then. Ringley was
Anodized
doing,
puppy nipple.
yeah, everything was anodized and color coded. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And
Should I
then
just
you
leave
had,
you two to get a room? Because
yeah. but this is the point, right? And back then, and this is the sort of car analogy, really, is that if you think about the cars that were back at that time, and you think about what a Ford Fiesta and a Ford Escort
Yep.
was, and now you consider what a Ford Fiesta, still the name, same name today, but also what a Ford Focus is today. When you start looking
Yep.
back on cars in that era and cars of today, we often look back fondly, don't we? And we say, "Oh, you remember when cars were that light and they were that, they were that nimble and agile and all that sort of stuff." And you go back to bikes of that day, and you sort of like, "Oh, do you remember when they were much more simplistic and easy?" Well, flip. I mean, now you imagine driving in a Mark III, Escort from Edinburgh to,
Yeah.
to right, the trip that Ped did,
oh yeah, well,
right?
just
Can you
to
imagine
Edinburgh,
doing
Yeah.
that
a
in
Yeah.
Mark III Escort.
exactly, versus the same size of car, the Audi S3 that you brought up? It's a totally different, and one of the
Yeah.
biggest things that technology has given over the past sort of 30 years or so is refinement, in my
Yep.
view, is the lack of
Yep.
fatigue on the human body. So we're able to do gnarlier terrain, we're able to do longer
Yep.
distances for the same human body being able to experience it. And I think that's where one of the biggest differences have come in technology, not only in cars but also in bikes as well.
Do you think it's more noticeable in the mountain bike scene? Because on a road bike, obviously the same progressions happened in all the different forms of sport. But you look at what downhill mountain bikers, you look at things like the Red Bull Rampage and stuff, and the things that they're doing on a bike probably wouldn't have been possible when you were doing that in the late 90s at that level anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, you had some crazy Americans like Josh Bender and all these people that sort of kicked that sort of thing off in the probably early 2000s, maybe late 90s.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had no finesse, like going back to what and a lot of that was down to the machinery they're on. They were literally like, crossing themselves and jumping off these. Whereas nowadays, yeah, you look at, I mean, everything is millimeter perfect, isn't it? It's like a
Yes.
Formula One lap. It has to be, everything
Yes.
picks up. But again, that's down to the machinery and the bike. I'm sure Brendan, his downhill bikes, he has 1,000% trust in those bikes that they're going to do what he wants them to do. And if he didn't, he wouldn't be doing what he does, I guess. But you're so right about the bikes and how far. Back to 2011 when I got my first enduro bike. I think it was a Common Sour, a used one. Used, I can't remember. Anyway, it was on sale or something. But picked this thing up and I thought, it's not going to be that good. And back then as well, that was still 26-inch wheels, so we hadn't even got to that stage then. But I remember jumping on it thinking, I want a downhill bike. And downhill bike in southern England, I mean, they're good for, they're one trick pony, and my mate was like, no, come out, you'd love it, Joe. And he used to race with me, a very good rider. We went out and first ride, I was like, oh my God, this thing, it's better than my downhill bike from 2005. But I can ride it up anything.
Yeah.
And this is a revelation,
Yeah.
And obviously since then, in 10 years, they've got so much better again. And as you say, your gravel bikes, and they're just, everything is just becoming so streamlined and so easy to ride and makes your life easy and makes everything, and that's before you even look at things like e-bikes and all that. I mean, that's just a completely different level again. But no, it's crazy.
Well, what's fascinating is that I now personally cannot process the speed personally of how fast a modern full suspension bike can cover terrain. The limiting factor of my Strava time on a particular downhill section is actually my inability to be able to process the trail fast enough. Not the bike's inability to be able to cover it. It's just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
It's the same for me, but that's just because I'm a complete wuss when it comes to going downhill on a mountain bike.
Oh, we've got to make this happen one day. I'd love up in Scotland or somewhere proper.
Yes, yeah. We'll do a lap at Glentress.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah,
but you're 100% right. In the older bikes, your lack of ability would get to the point where you couldn't hold the bars anymore because your hands get thrown off or whatever. But now you're right. Now the bikes are so good at what they do.
Yes.
That, it's actually there's no excuses anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah. A guy came and bought a bike today, and it was a particularly nice sort of trail bike.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I really like the look of this." I said, "Yeah, there's only one problem with it." He said, "Oh, what?" I said, "You will never be able to blame the bike ever again."
Yeah.
And he went, "Damn it."
I know that feeling with my road bike incoming.
Yeah. Oh, you've stitched yourself up good and proper there, Pete.
I know. Yeah, I'm on my turbo, which you can just see behind me for those watching on YouTube. Every night at the moment, just trying to get fit enough to justify that bike.
Yes.
Oh, good man. Oh, we'll have to do another stage. We'll have to rotate. We'll have to go out to somewhere like Alpe d'Huez and do a mountain climb out there. I actually did that on a Brompton as well a few years ago.
Alpe d'Huez on a Brompton.
Alpe d'Huez on a Brompton. So I did it. I can't remember what my time was. It was. I mean, it was nothing decent, but it was decent for Brompton, and I did it in one go all the way up to the top, like above the village to the high bit, and then turned around, came back down, and I just loved that descent. Was just it's such an amazing place, but not on a Brompton again. Let's do it.
It's like that guy. It must have been a few years ago now. He took a Boris bike to Mont Ventoux.
Oh,
because you got like, is it 24 hours you can hire a Boris bike?
So correct.
Drove to Mont Ventoux, did Mont Ventoux and down, and then drove back again and dropped it back at the. What a hero!
That was fabulous, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, what a video! And have you ever felt the weight of those things?
Oh, mate, it's like a small moon.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Oh man. Okay, so bike wise, then you're still riding a bit at the moment. So what's have you got an enduro bike at the moment?
Yeah, so I've got an enduro bike at the moment. I'm sad to say that it's actually I got it about a month ago and I haven't ridden it yet. So it's
is that because you fell off the last one?
Well, yeah, I did. I had a horrible because I really got back into it last summer, obviously with the lockdown, and I just did lots of riding. Started to get a little bit fit, but then started to get my speed back, and I was feeling great. And I was going up to all my local sort of downhill woods and trails, and riding with friends that are either still riding or pros like Brendan and stuff. And I was like, my pace was coming back. And I was getting faster and faster, and I was like, "This is good. I'm enjoying it, and I'm getting faster, and everything's good. Like everything was gelling." So then I ended up going to my little local downhill park, which is up at Aston Hill, and hitting all the old trails that I used to race on. And again, I was feeling great, and I was like, "Okay, this is good." Like, and then next thing, like it just out of nowhere, I wasn't wearing any pads because in my head I was like, "Okay, I'm not pushing hard. I'm doing 8/10." And I just came off on this corner, and it was just before a big step down, and you kind of like scrub this jump. And as I went to scrub it, I just slid, and kind of just the bike just went away from me, and I just landed like on my arms and knees and just and it's just because I'm so heavy now, and I just haven't fallen off a bike for ages. So I used to be good at falling and just let the fall do its thing, but I think I tensed up and. I ended up, I thought I'd literally torn the ligaments in my knee. I couldn't walk for about 2 weeks. But thankfully, it was all superficial stuff. It was just so much internal bruising that literally for a week, I couldn't do anything, like nothing. except for feel sorry for myself. And so suddenly I went from being at real high, like, oh yeah, I'm not too old for this, you know. I am. Yeah, real eye opener. But yeah, that was the last time I rode properly. But we've got a little turbo trainer downstairs, and I'd get on that twice a week just to get the heart going for fitness more than anything. But yeah, I have got a new bike and I'm going to ride it. Definitely going to ride it in the next couple of weeks and throughout the summer. Get back on it.
So you've not been tempted to proper bikes, road bike?
Yeah, well, you say that. I love road bikes. I think the problem when I lived in Australia and I was probably at my best and I was training very hard to sort of come to Europe and do some World Cups, I was doing, and this isn't a word of a lie, for 403 days or something straight. I was living in down near Mount Kembla, which is down near Wollongong, south of Sydney, and I was training with all, including people like Cadell Evans and
Wow.
there was a few other.
Wow.
Who was there at the time? So I mean, Cadell would be there once every 2 or 3 weeks. He would come on this ride, but I mean, it's a name drop. People would obviously know who he is. But we'll do 100 kilometers every single day, so every morning, which is it's only 60 miles, which on a road bike isn't much, but I was doing that every day for 400 and something days straight. Not even like we didn't have New Year's off or anything. So and I loved that. We'd meet up every morning. There'd be sometimes 5 of us, sometimes 25 of us, and we'll do this same route, which was just brilliant. Some amazing descents and lots of adrenaline sort of along the route. And I loved that scenario. And then a bit later on, when I lived up in Manly, I did the same thing. I used to go out with a few of us. There was 3, 4 of us, and I loved doing road miles. But back in, I don't know, where I lived in Denham, it just wasn't practical because I was right in the M25. All the roads around me were horrible. There were potholes, the traffic. It was just nothing worse for me than getting on a road bike. Here's better, and there's a lot of other cyclists, which is always good because then people are aware of there being cyclists, you know. But yeah, no, I think a road bike. I love, and every time I get on one, I just love them because they're so efficient and they're so amazing. But yeah, I think because of my lack of time now, it's like if I'm on a bike, I want to be off road, being a bit naughty and trying not to fall off, you know. But yeah, maybe I need to get myself a road bike. I'd fall off that as well.
Yeah. I'm banned from falling off my new road bike.
Yes, yeah, it can be very expensive. You crash the car, just don't crash the bike.
Put yourself in harm's way, Greaves. Just fall on you. Don't let the bike touch the ground. So here's a question then, because this is now branching into Paul's favourite subject. What are your thoughts on e-bikes? Now, we've actually done an episode for Cycle Sunday on e-bikes. Interesting, we've done one on mountain bikes, on the different styles of mountain bikes from kind of cross-country, enduro, downhill. And we haven't aired those yet. But the e-bike one, I found that when we made it, the most interesting one in terms of the crossover between the technology on an e-bike and cars, especially electric cars, obviously, in terms of motors and power and batteries and stuff. Have you had a go on one?
Yeah, I have. So the first time I rode an e-bike, this is quite a funny story actually. It was I was at Brendan Faircraft's wedding, so about 2 summers ago. And it was July, maybe August, beautiful summer's evening. We were all it was in this amazing sort of field. He had these marquee, it was just beautiful wedding. And I was absolutely trolleyed by like.
You're an athlete, Joe. You don't drink alcohol.
No, I never drink. 1 second, sorry, I'll just
Cheers, by the way.
So I was pretty trolleyed, and I can't remember who was there. There was lots of pros there. Maybe it was Sam Reynolds or someone was there, and they'd ridden across sort of land to get there because they all live in this similar area near Peaslake. And he'd come on his e-bike. So I was sitting next to him at dinner. It was Sam, and I was like, "What's the e-bike like?" And he's like, "Mate, you got to take it out." So a couple of hours later, just as the sun was setting, I was really drunk. So I've got this thing, and I've never, I put it in boost mode or whatever, and the field went up. And honestly, even in my fit heyday, trying to ride up that field, I don't think I could have quite done it just because of the how steep it was. You know, I wouldn't have got the grip and whatever. And he said, go for it. I was like, oh, mate, no, I'm too drunk. He said, just ride it up there and see what happens. So, and I just powered up there and I felt like literally like Superman. Obviously, I was really drunk as well. And I was like, this is amazing. And that was the first time I ever ridden one. And I managed to stay on it. But since I borrowed a couple off Andy, and I like them and I appreciate what they do. And I haven't fallen in love with them though. But then I think if I took one to somewhere like Bike Park Wales or a bike park where I could do laps all day and really sort of get the most out of it, then I'd enjoy it. But what I find a bit annoying or frustrating with them is it's similar to an EV road car, I guess, is the weight factor. And trying to throw an e-bike around to me just feels really, really heavy. And I think there's just a different way and a different approach of riding them. And I haven't spent enough time on one to appreciate it. But everyone I know that's a good cyclist and, that I sort of listen to in terms of cycling, everyone says they're great once you've, because you can do so many more. It's not about being less fit, which a lot of people think, especially sort of our age group as well. It's like, it's almost better because you're not pushing yourself super hard. You're inclined to do more miles on one because it's easier and you can enjoy your trails for longer. So yeah, I don't know where I stand with them. I've ridden them, I appreciate them, but I still enjoy ultimately a non-powered, because I love that feeling of being on a bike. It's always about, this is me, this is my power. I'm making this happen with this bike underneath me. And I think an e-bike, although you're still doing a certain amount of, it's kind of taken some of that element away. But I don't know what your opinions are on them.
Well, so Paul would describe an e-bike as the lightest bike in the world. Hey, mate. if you talk power to weight ratio.
If you talk power to weight ratio, yeah. But the thing is that I absolutely agree with everything that Joe says, frankly. And when you're putting the kind of watts and the kind of power that I imagine that Joe will be putting through the pedals, I mean, you say that you've not ridden a ton recently, and you feel heavier than you have done. But for somebody who has done 404 days of 100 kilometers a day, you'll never lose that muscle memory and that sort of that almost sinewy fitness that you'll have. So if you're on a reasonably high-end enduro bike, putting through, I don't know, a couple of 250, 300 watts through the pedals relatively easily, then you'll be able to enjoy all aspects of that bike. You'll be able to enjoy pinning a climb because you've got the power and the cardiovascular to be able to do it. But then you'll also enjoy, that less weight because you don't have 10 kilos of engine and battery. As low and as centered as it is, if you are a properly competent descender, and you used to sort of gapping doubles, and you used to be able to, do road gaps and that sort of thing, then I can understand where you would feel the frustration of that. But if you now put your mind's eye into, let's say, an average person who's a recreational person who absolutely loves riding the bike,
me,
but they haven't. Well, no, because again, you've got 8 years of reasonable distances and that sort of stuff. But if you imagine that your average watts, you're a relatively fit rider, your average watts is about 130 to 150 watts going through the pedals, and every single time you go and do a red route at 17 to 20 kilometers long, you get to the other end, and it's just like, phew, I've really had a good day on my bike, but I'm ready to go home now. You put another 250 watts of power through those legs. You've now suddenly got 400 watts of power on the climbs for just 10 kilos of extra weight. And suddenly that red route turns into the best day you've ever had on a bike. So I think I can totally and completely understand your perspective, for sure. but understanding it from, if you will, from a sort of average rider's perspective, it is a slightly different start point.
No, that's you've really hit the nail on the head, because I went for a ride last summer with a good friend of mine, Andy, who runs Saracen actually, and we were both on like cross country sort of short travels, full suspensions, and we were flying around Woburn, and he's really good on a bike, and we were like, okay, good pace. And next thing we could hear this person behind us, and he was closing in on us.
Yes.
And it was like, okay, well, he must be, pretty decent. So we pulled over an obvious e-bike. And so Andy's muttering under his. I'm not going to say what he said on this podcast, but yeah, might have started with an F, and he's like, and he's not getting it. He's not going to drop us, Joe. And literally 2 minutes later, he was like, oh, forget it. Like, because like you said, he was like this. He looked like a young kid. He didn't look very fit, or very strong. Like he wasn't sinewy, but the power. It was like watching Superman on a bike, and the fun he must have been having, because we certainly weren't trying to keep up with him. But I never thought of it like that. That's such a good. Yeah, it's a very
the analogy that I get. Okay. Oh, sorry, Peter. Sorry.
No. I was just going to say very briefly. The number that freaked me out when we were doing the e-bike video is the torque. So they're like 80 Newton meters of torque on a bike.
Wow.
Yeah. So the Bosch Performance CX engine is 250 watts of power and 85 Newton meters of torque when it's in turbo.
On a bike.
And on a bike. And the thing that you've got to bear in mind is that that's up to 25 kilometers an hour. So if you can imagine, I can't remember the exact numbers, but something like Nino Schurter, multiple cross-country world champion.
Yeah.
If, say, for example, you, Joe, were putting 200 watts through your cranks.
Yeah.
With an e-bike, you'd be putting 450 watts through the crank.
Yes.
And 85 Newton meters of torque plus your torque.
Yeah.
Up to 25 kilometers an hour. Uphill, single track actually gets entertaining.
Yeah.
At 25 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
So this is the thing is, they're just wonderful things, but I think they complement the industry. They don't replace it.
No, 100%. And I think that's a bit like EVs, and I know you're more of an EV fan, Ped, than I am. But no, but I think you're, but more so with the bikes. You're 100% right. When I first heard about e-bikes, I was just like, oh no, like the whole thing of a bike is it's your fitness, it's your thing, it's you and the bike. It's no, why do we need these? Like, get a motor. I really had a sort of a bit of a negative point of view on it. And then I started to hear, more things, and then I got to ride one, and 100%, as you say, and it almost encourages a lot of older people or people sort of my sort of age. In fact, my good friend Pete from Petrolhead Tours, I was at his house the other day, and he's got, I think it's a Trek or a Specialized e-bike.
Yeah,
it looks amazing, and but he's inclined to take that out all the time because even if you're feeling a little bit under the weather, a little bit tired, or it's like, doesn't matter. Just go and do one lap of your local. Like, if you feel stronger, do 2, do 3, and I think it's almost like encouraging you to do more, isn't it? It's not the whole, do nothing and sit there, and no, it's not that. It's just, it just gives you encouragement, and then you can have a lot more fun. But I need to spend. So that's another one, right? So we got.
You're going to be buying N+1, mate. N+1.
Yeah, e-bikes in Scotland might be the one, because Scotland's not particularly flat. So maybe we should do that.
I mean, the big takeaway that I always give to customers is exactly your point, Joe, is that what an e-bike does more than anything else is gets you over the thought of riding a bike.
Yeah.
Because every ride, that first 15 to 20 minutes, cold legs, cold lungs, not been on a bike for a week, busy week, you're a bit tired. How many times have you not gone and ridden your non-e-bike because the thought of getting on your bike has put you off, and I'll go tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right.
So many times.
Well, there you go. In which case, that's cheating. That's defeating the object.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you'd had an e-bike, you'd have gone out and
Yeah.
you'd have got fitter as a result of it because you'd have ridden more.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal your analogy now, Paul, because Joe wouldn't have heard it, but I think this is genius. So Paul's analogy of an e-bike is the travelator at an airport.
Yes.
So you and I walking at an airport, we're both walking at the same speed, so we're both burning the same amount of calories, but you go on to the travelator and I don't. So we both burn the same amount of calories, but you go twice as far as I do because you're going along at the speed of the travelator plus the speed you're walking, and that's an e-bike.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
That's cool. No, you're both. Yeah, that's you're 100% right. I need to get out, do some more e-biking.
Yeah.
So moving on. So we've now kind of tried to convert the world to e-bikes. Next question then is what's your most memorable day on a bike? Do you have one?
Oh, memorable day on a bike.
One where you either did something that you never thought was possible, or it was just you just felt amazing and did something brilliant, or your perfect descent, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think there's lots. I mean, I think some of my most memorable days were I used to go out to the Alps, not up to, is it Morzine and Leger and stuff, to do a lot of practice. And I had some amazing, memorable sort of downhill descents there. But I think some of my most memorable rides would have to be probably riding with someone like Brendan, and actually, like, actually, occasionally being able to sort of stay close to him messing around and not pushing at all, but like being able to sort of hang on and just experience a tiny fraction of what those guys do and how they ride, and watching. I really appreciate that. It's the same with when we see someone who's very good in a car at driving. I love appreciating someone who's their top of the game, and how easy it's just exactly the same as a very good racing driver when you're sitting in the passenger seat and they're just talking to you like they're doing nothing, and they make everything look so easy, and you're sitting there going, how are you doing that? And why are you making me look so bad? And it's the same bike. I really appreciate. I think just following Brendan, probably a simple one, on a Pease Lake trail, following someone like Brendan down one of his trails, and managing to stay close enough that I can actually watch what he's doing and appreciate how easy he makes it look, and just enjoying it at the same time. I mean,
having met Brendan just the once when we were at the Palmer Day, was it 2 years ago? Probably now.
Yeah.
And then going off and then basically becoming addicted to watching videos of him on YouTube and watching what he does.
Yeah.
I find that level, and I guess it's probably the same in most sports actually, that level of ability on a bike, a downhill bike in particular. I guess downhill bikers for me are a bit like rally drivers in the motorsport world, right? There's so many variables that you throw in. Whereas someone like, I don't know, a Bradley Wiggins or a Chris Froome are a kind of circuit driver, really. But you watch these guys, or is it not Rebecca, Rachel Atherton? The same kind of thing. You watch them downhill, and I just don't understand. I don't understand how it's possible for someone to be so relaxed and so unscared of crashing and having a massive accident. Because that's what the second I start going fast downhill, I think it's an age thing. When we were kids, I'm going to come on to being kids in a minute to finish off, but when we were kids, we didn't think like that. I remember I jumped 11 people on a grifter when I was at school. Because we set this jump up. In fact, let's do that now. We set a jump. I lived on like an orchard, and we had like a hill and a big green outside the house, and we set this jump up with my mate's mum's ironing board and a whole like the caravan steps and some other bits. And then we were seeing like how far we could jump on our bikes. And I was the only one in my group of friends that didn't have a BMX, because I got a rally grifter about 6 months before the burner came out, and that was it. That was my new bike for my childhood, and I wasn't allowed to have a BMX, so I had to do everything on a grifter. I've done a quarter pipe on a grifter.
Wow.
Badly. But yeah, I jumped 11 people. But you didn't think about falling. Oh, snap the forks, but that's a small minor problem. You didn't think about falling off when you were a kid, but I think the older I've got and the more, I guess when I competed at eventing on horses and stuff, I didn't really think about hurting myself. But now, now I do it all the time, and it's like this mental block that just stops me going faster.
Yeah, I think it's like anything, like you're saying. You look at Lewis Hamilton, they all these people that are just unbelievably good at what they do. They start at such a young age, and the same with. I remember racing. I remember when I first met Brendan. He was like this young kid. He would have been maybe 10 or 11 years old, and he was there with his old man. And he was so fast at that age. And I just remember watching him, and he just had no fear. And I think, and he'd raced, I guess, because mountain biking when I was a kid wasn't really even a thing. I mean, I don't know. When did mountain bikes? When were early 90s? They sort of came around, right?
Yeah, late 80s, early 90s. Yes.
And we were a bit behind sort of the States, and obviously, PT and Jason McCroy's and around all those guys. That's kind of what got me into it, watching these videos of these guys. And but so kind of I guess that's not my excuse. I grew up in London and I just wasn't a cyclist when I was really young. But you watch these kids at 6-7 years old, and they've got some decent kit, and they're already throwing themselves downhill. By the time they're 20 years old, they're so gifted and good at what they do. And I think the fear factor. I think there's so many elements to what those guys do, what Brendan does. It's obviously massive talent, but a massive pair of kahunas. But then I say massive pair of kahunas. Actually, to him, it's not. It's just what he does and what he knows, and he can get to that. A bit like you and I on a track. We know where our limits are. We can go beyond that, and it's a bit like, oh, okay. But and it's the same with him. He knows where his limits are. But it's just the variables in a downhill run. Every run's different. The track changes and evolves, and the conditions change. And that's what always I can never get my head around is, their last practice run might be at 10 in the morning, and their first race run might be at 3 in the afternoon. And between then, it's rained. There's been 400 people gone down. Everything's changed so much, and that's having to adapt. What you're actually seeing, you're kind of adapting to what's going on in front of you. You know where the course goes, but everything's changed since you're there last. And I just think, it's amazing. It really is. I think, but all cycling, I think that every discipline is so amazing. And I actually, another little cycling story. Sorry if I'm going on.
No, we like
it's great.
Stories. That's the whole point.
The wine's kicking in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a track day last year at Brands Hatch with Michelin, and so I went down there, and they hired out the Brands Hatch GP circuit, and there was only going to be a handful of us. So I turned up, and Ollie Webb was there, a couple others. Anyway, this guy turns up in an Aston Martin press car, and I was like, oh, in the same garage as me, and he gets out, and I'm like, it's Chris Hoy. I'm like, oh my god, it's Chris Hoy, and so I kind of I can't remember what I did. I think this was only last year. I feel like I was a 15-year-old kid, and I kind of walked out of the garage, even though my car was in the same twin garage as his. I walked out because I was just like, oh my god, I walked the other direction. But obviously later on that day, it started to rain in the morning, so we're kind of sheltering and talking about car. He got talking to me, and I told him about I used to ride bikes, and obviously you're a big hero of mine. Nicest guy ever. And we ended up talking for about an hour, literally an hour, about cycling and how, we still have to, the car for him, a bit like with me, it kind of feeds me some of that adrenaline and fun factor that I miss from cycling. But obviously a lot more so for him, because for him it's like a drug for him, isn't it? All those years of being at the top of your game. And he was just saying to me, he can't let it go. His competitive, his, get out of my way, I'm going to win streak. He's had to let that drop a bit. But he said, I still go out with my mates, and there's still every climb, every whatever, what bikes, whatever we're doing. He's like, still competitive, Joe, still competitive. I was like, I can see that. You can see his eyes. And I was like, but that was just, that was amazing. I remember just leaving there, and I rung my mum actually, And she was like, "Oh, how was the track day?" I was like, "Track day was great, but I just spent the day with Chris Hoy and or Sarah Chris Hoy and and obviously Mum and
Wow.
they're massively into their cycling as well, and it's just
Yeah.
that was such a highlight. But yeah, what a lovely bloke, like just so down to earth and so almost surprised that like you're almost like, oh, you know who I am. No idea. No.
Did you tell him you were a Brompton world champion, mate?
Oh, I did tell him that. I did. I did. I told him. I was like, "Yeah, you're not the only world champion in here, mate." And I literally did tell him, and he thought it was hilarious. I was like, "No, it's pretty serious, mate. Yeah, in your condition, you might just about take the title, but yeah, no, he thought it was hilarious. He really.
When you got your Brompton world title, did you get like a rainbow suit instead of a rainbow jersey?
No, so you got the first year I did it. You got a green suit. And the year after that, you didn't. You just got a medal. But you also won in the first year I did it. You won a one-off, not like a one-off Brompton with the rainbow top tube, so it had like the rainbow thing on it. So it was really good. The prizes gradually got worse and worse, but
you still got that bike there, right?
No, I sold that. I've still got my race Brompton, which is my last race Brompton, which has done no miles, one with carbon. It's such a nice bit of kit. It's in storage at the moment. But yeah, I need to do something with that. It's either ride it or sell it or do something with it. But yeah.
We need to do a video with it, my friend.
A video? I might lose subscribers with that. Yeah.
Oh, mate, have either of you been on a velodrome? Because that's one of the kind of There's a few cycling things that I'd love to have a go at, and one of them is velodrome, and I've never done it. I've come close a couple of times, but never done it.
It is addictive, absolutely addictive. Yeah, for my 40th birthday, Rosie, my wife, bought me an accreditation 1 session at the Velodrome, and actually the Sir Chris Hoy Velodrome in Glasgow, which is the steepest velodrome in Europe.
Yeah.
So it's beyond 45 degrees at its maximum, and it's straight away. And when you, I know everybody says this on the telly when they're doing the sort of run around and what have you, but you cannot walk up it. It is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the first time you have to be doing a serious lick to get up on the wall itself. And the first time you rail one of those corners, it is just the most exhilarating feeling. But what you don't appreciate is just the number of watts that you have to put in at the end of the straight just to engage the corner. I mean, you literally, when you're flying along, you come off the top of the at the end of the corner, you come onto the straight, and the thing is just absolutely flying. But then you have to engage more watts to then be able to rail the corner again, and then you get shot out of the other side. It's just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
See a video coming along here, Joe.
And particularly when you're doing your chain gangs and you go up the wall, and you've got 10 people that then come in underneath you, and you've got 10 people railing the corner. And you've got this bird's eye view of these people who are just coming in underneath, and then you drop in and accelerate back into their draft again. I tell you, I'm just, it's just absolutely flipping amazing.
It sounds amazing. You're buzzing talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to watch a few times, and it is. I was there when Wiggins did his hour record, and that was.
Oh wow!
Incredible. Yeah. But yeah, no.
I mean, they're amazing. I've done about 2 laps on a Brompton I was out in Austria racing
on a Brompton.
Yeah. I was out in Austria doing this. They had a round of the Brompton World Championships in Austria. They had a series one year, and one of the rounds was in Austria. So I actually flew to Germany, got a BMW press car, back in 2016 or something, and drove across to Austria. Where was it? In is Salzburg? Is that Austria?
Salzburg, yeah.
Salzburg, yeah. I think it was. Anyway, so we did our thing, but it was all in this amazing, like, it was like a center of bikes, and it was really cool, this whole area. And they built this new velodrome, and so the organisers that were there are like, they were showing us it. And me and my friend Yavor we asked, we said, can we go out there? They're like, well, if you think you can. The same thing. It was like, and apparently that one was nowhere near as angled as some of them are.
Sure.
We did a couple of laps, and then I just got a little bit. It just didn't feel natural. Like, it, especially on that, we weren't going very fast, but I just can't imagine. It gave you a bit of an idea of what these people are doing out there, like Chris and. I mean, just, it's mad. But so steep. And then you see, I forget the discipline of it, where they stop and they play sort of cat and mouse with each other, and they balance. They do they do a track stand, and you think, how are you even staying there? Like, how are those, how you even got the grip? Occasionally they do fall, don't they? The front end goes and the back end goes. But like, how are you even balancing up? Like, it's like a tightrope, like, but fair play. Amazing.
Yeah.
I did Roubaix Velodrome, but just one lap of it at the end of the Paris-Roubaix Sportif. That's my little,
Oh, nice.
It's not a particularly steep velodrome though. It's quite shallow.
Yeah, but cool. after what you'd done, Peter, that had got to be special. That had got to be
miles.
Very special. To think that someone like Fabian Cancellara and all those sorts of people will have also done exactly that same route and exactly that same finish. That must have been actually quite emotional, was it?
Oh, I cried my eyes out. Yeah, definitely. But it's wonderful. One of those great ones. It's the same thing. You do that. What's really great about that Paris-Roubaix Sportif is it's held the day before the pros do the Paris-Roubaix race for real. So everyone kind of the next day you go and watch the race, and if you're clever, you can normally catch it in a couple of places. But I trained really hard for that, and I think we were doing on the pavé. I think I maxed out at 20, 22 miles an hour, something like that, 23 miles an hour on the pavé. You go and watch the pros; they're doing like 40 odd mile an hour on the pavé on the flat. It's just unbelievable. It's just nuts. But that's probably my best day on the bike. I think it was sure. But to finish in the Roubaix Velodrome was many tears were shed and many beers were drunk.
Brilliant.
Well, we're getting to the end of our time, but it's just been just fascinating. Again, I've known you for a long time now, Joe, and I've learned so much about you today that I didn't know. And your cycling history is a good palmarès, my friend.
Yeah, it's a while. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. I think it is amazing how many people in the car world cross over to the bike world. I think there's a lot of avid cyclists who are big motorists and not just use cars to transport their bike. I mean, like actual petrol heads and actual proper cyclists. It is great because whenever I've done anything on my channel cycling related, you do get a lot of people like, oh, you need to do more. I love what you're doing and obviously it'd be great to come up and see your shop ball and all that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Down the track.
And if you haven't listened to last week's podcast, we mentioned you a few times because last week's podcast was all about carrying your bike and the best ways to carry your bike. And basically you came into the conversation when I said, well, you wouldn't put your bike on the outside of a car, full stop. It goes inside the car.
I'm obsessed. Yeah, always. That's why that's the hatchback obsession for me. It's bike inside, bike secure inside. I always have like proper straps and make sure it's because I'm very aware if I have an accident or something, I don't want anything behind me to slide through and hit me. So, but always, I've always been very precious with bikes in. I just, I don't know where you guys went with that, and I'll listen to it for sure. But I just think, I think when I go to like Wales for Bike Park Wales or something with my mountain bike, if I've got that on the roof or even on the boot, I can't then have proper fun in my car on the way down there because I'm aware of this enduro bike on the roof. And and I'm worried about the bike. Like there's two sides to it. So I'm worried about the bike falling off, and I'm worried that I can't push my car because the bike's going to pull itself off. So I'd just rather have everything in the car with me and safe and eat. But then I regret that decision if it rains all day and the bike's covered in mud and I've got to put it. But yeah, no, that's a whole I'll listen to that podcast. I'm sure you guys discuss it.
No, it's good. I think I think we came down to the conclusion. There's a lot of it's based on kind of on money is a big thing, is what you can afford. So if you can afford an estate car or a car that gets your bike in it, brilliant.
Yeah.
But if not, if you are going to put it on the outside, you just have to be wary of how well it's attached to the car. And we had a really interesting chat about e-bikes actually, and how a lot of people, because if you put an e-bike on a bike carrier, they're bloody heavy things, right? So it's got to be a specific e-bike tow bar mounted carrier, otherwise don't bother. So
yeah. And then at 57 minutes of the podcast, we apologized to everybody when I turned around and said, but forget about all that I've said, just buy a van.
Really, that's so true. But you're 100%. It's so funny you say that, because I've been talking to my friend who I've been sort of talking about the whole way through this, a good friend of mine, Scott. Back in the day, he used to have this van, and I used to always feel smug because I'd turn up in whatever it was at the time, nothing particularly special, but whatever I couldn't afford. And then at the end of the weekend, the race weekend, my bike and all the muddy tyres and wheels and all this stuff would go in there and ruin my pride and joy completely. And he would be in his van, and I'd be feeling less smug about it. But now when I look back on it, I just think he had this van. He had like a jet wash. He had everything. And at the end of the weekend, he could just throw it all in the van, get in a lovely clean cabin, and drive home. But back then I used to feel smug about the fact that I had a little hot hatch or whatever it was, and it's like, no, I got it all wrong. Like the van is the way to go, especially with mountain biking in mud. And it's like, no, I should have had a van. Like, what was I thinking? But you live and learn, don't you?
Yeah. Well, if it ever came to it that I actually had any money, and somebody said, "What would your dream car be?" I'd love to take something like a Ford Transit Connect.
Yes.
Take it to somewhere like Retro Power.
Yeah.
And say, what I want you to do is I want you to transplant the underpinnings from a Focus RS and put that into a Transit Connect.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what a weapon that would be?
Yeah.
4-wheel drive, 320-ish horsepower, Transit Connect on a B road with your bikes in the back, and all these people who have got Audi S3s and BMWs and Porsches and stuff like that going, what just happened to me?
Yeah.
Can you remember, it would have been 4 or 5 years ago, Justin Law brought a transit van to Festival of Speed with an XJ220 engine and underpinnings. Yeah. So there you go, mate. I reckon we're onto something there.
Yeah.
But on that bombshell. Joe, thank you so much for coming on the Cycle Sunday podcast. I'll put all your details and for the guys listening, just go onto YouTube and search Joe Achilles. You have an amazing YouTube channel and you do some amazing content, especially around performance cars. I'm gonna embarrass you now by saying, for me, you are one of the best drivers that are also YouTubers out there. I think the way you drive and your content is superb. So make sure you go and check out Joe. But I'm so chuffed that we got to find out a bit more about your cycling background. It's been fascinating.
It was lovely. Well, firstly, lovely to meet you, Paul. And as I say, hopefully we'll come up and we will at one point meet you in Scotland.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I love your shop. So yeah, it looks amazing. And I love what you guys are doing. And yeah, Pete. Well, likewise. The feeling is completely mutual. And I love your content. I love what you do. And you're a pretty good driver as well.
Oh, we all love each other. How lovely is that? Anyway, while we get a room, I'm going to call this podcast to a close. As we always say, I've been Pete Greaves.
I've been Paul Bowker.
And I've been Joe Achilles.
Look at that. We'll see you on the next episode of Cycle Sunday, guys, and tune into the next podcast. Thanks for joining us.